Bill 21, repealing the exemption for one-way pagers. It's a nice white bill. And anybody want to talk to us about this bill? All it does, 3915-105A Romanet 8K is repealed. And I guess this kind of comes down to, does anybody even have one-way pagers anymore? Go ahead, Senator James.
Mr. Chairman, I was just curious, do we have any employers that use one-way pagers or anything like that?
About
Because that'd be kind of important, I know, for like when people are on call and stuff. I would think, I know they used to use one-way pagers, but I don't know if they still do or if they do cell phone or, I mean, so that's my question, if we have any employers that this would help out or anything like that. Thank you.
So, does anybody want to address this on the committee? Right.
Full amount.
How about Department of Revenue? You guys got anything exciting about this?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Terry Lucero, Excise Tax Division, the Department of Revenue. I have no idea if there's employers that use one-way pagers or not. We don't receive any information on companies and what exemptions they may take and may not take. So.
Go ahead, Senator James.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How much tax exemptions do you give out for one-way pagers?
We don't know that either, do we? Because they don't file.
Oh.
Right? Is that right?
Chairman Case, Senator James, you're correct. The deductions, if they are a licensed vendor that would be reporting to us anyway, they just take a deduction for whatever exemptions they're taking. They don't split those deductions out to us, so we don't know.
Anybody else? Any other questions? Thanks.
Thank you.
Who else would like to address the committee on this? Anybody else? So committee, I don't think anybody's using one-way pagers anymore. So I think that was kind of, I remember used to be in the telecom business and they were used. That's where you had the thing on your belt and you get it give you the number, then you'd go call that number possibly from a payphone or something. Now everybody has a cell phone service with text. It's two-way, certainly is text. So removing this doesn't seem to be of any consequence. So anybody else? Is there a motion on the bill? Move. So we got a motion by Baldwin, discussion. All right, roll call.
House Bill 21, Senator Baldwin.
Aye.
Senator James.
No.
Senator Pappas.
Aye.
Senator Schuler. Chairman Case.
Aye. The bill is passed. Who would like to carry that bill on the floor? Pappas, you're okay. We're coming. We won't have Senator James carry that one. So the next bill is House Bill 22, Industrial Revenue Bonds Pilot Payments. This is a bill that actually gives a tax break ability when industrial revenue bonds are issued. So would anybody like to address this on the bill? Ma'am, you're welcome to. Aye.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Lisa Johnson, representing Wyoming Economic Development Association. And we ask for your favorable consideration of this bill. And one of the reasons is because economic development financing is one of our legislative priorities for this session. And we think this bill supports economic development in three ways. It provides an alternative financing mechanism that encourages capital investment and job creation in our state. It helps facilitate private sector investment. And we think it can serve as an incentive to lower the cost for development in the short term while encouraging long-term investments in our state and public benefits. The handout that I've provided describes the public benefits, as I mentioned, the expanded tax base, jobs, and even new markets for Wyoming products. And it talks about how the process works, although you've received a very thorough report from the Legislative Service Office in examining how it works in other states. And so I think that was really useful information. But the other thing that I've tried to provide for you are some examples of how this could benefit projects across the state of Wyoming in different communities. So that those projects are listed on the back of the handout. And the types of manufacturing projects that could use this, it includes agriculture, processing, manufacturing. There's just a whole variety that could be really put in any community across Wyoming. So beef processing is one idea, feed mills, and ethanol plant. Really, these revenue bonds could be used for recruiting a new company to Wyoming, helping an existing company expand, or even someone in Wyoming that wants to start a new venture. And so I won't go into the details of those projects, but there are some real live examples that our members had provided. And finally, I'd like to offer this comparison of industrial revenue bond financing to another program that we have for economic development in Wyoming, and that's through the Wyoming Business Council, the Business Ready Community Grant and Loan Program, where communities can sponsor a grant or a loan to either construct or purchase real estate for a company and lease it back to that company. And that, of course, is using public dollars in that type of a project. Well, with industrial revenue bonds, they can be sold to the private sector. So I just think that's kind of an interesting comparison, that this is a tool that accomplishes similar objectives, but has more private sector investment potentially. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Nice job. Questions from Ms. Johnson?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Pappas?
Yeah, just since we don't get our little purple sheets anymore, what was the change that was made in the House? From our,
Well, I think the House Chairman's here. So, but any other questions from Ms. Johnson? Ms. Johnson, are these bonds tax exempt? Do you remember that?
Well, as I have visited with the LSO staff, they can be either tax exempt or taxable.
Depending on.
Yes. I think the advantage is, though, that it just gives you flexibility in putting a project together to meet the needs of the company, whether they are looking for something that's taxable or tax exempt. And then it's negotiated at the local community level on how that project would be put together.
So you're following up on that. What do you think? So it's the local governing body that issues these, right? And that's where the taxes, they discuss that whatever compensation in lieu of taxes, up to 50% of the property taxes, I guess. Is that right? So what would that look like, do you think? Or maybe Mr. Chairman has an idea, but any idea?
Mr. Chairman, I could offer one example.
Sure.
And then there's probably others that could answer that question better than I could. But I know that in some states, when they negotiate these projects, they negotiate the percentage of the pilot payments or the length of the term, depending on the benefit to the community. So they look at things like job creation and the type of investment in the community. And if they can demonstrate that there's a greater economic impact or economic benefit to the community, then that's how they structure that deal.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else from Ms. Johnson? Mr. Co-Chairman, welcome. How are things over in your side of the woods?
Wonderful. The
Thank
sun came up today, right through the big
Yeah.
old window.
you, Ms. Johnson.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
members, committee, this handout that I gave you is really from the reports that Ms. Shippen put together. And there's a couple memos, and we get so much information through the interim.
Yeah.
So I went back and met with her, went through these PowerPoints and the memos that she put together. And really, I just took these two things, cut and put them together, because these were the questions in the House. And how I use this just really for members to answer these questions. First of all, there is no government money at any level. There's no government buying any of these bonds. There's no government financing. There's not. It is simply, the key word here are conduit bonds. So the local government, and that's what this, and you can see it, it says IRBs are also called conduit bonds, and this comes from the LSO memo. So many of these are self-financed. So the company will finance themselves, but they'll run it through the local government through this program to get the tax benefit. That's it. And then you'll recall, you've been here a long time, Mr. Chairman, this paragraph explains what were permissible investments in the permanent mineral trust fund.
Right.
We used to have this, and that little bit there you can read, where we allowed these to be state purchase of these to be these kind of local investments. And you can kind of read that. It went from 100 million up to 600 million and then back down to 100 million. We allowed that much of the permanent mineral trust fund to be invested in these. You can see the companies that we bought into these bonds and that did not work out, right? And there's a few others. The one over in Grable also. So then you keep reading towards the bottom of this. 2015 management audit gave us the report. And then in 2016, Senate File 63, sponsored by management audit, repealed, right, the statutory authority for the state's purchase of any of these kind of bonds. Okay. I'm looking over Miss Shippen. I think I said that right. Right. She's giving me the nod. So the permanent mineral trust fund is not going to be used to buy any of these or any of that. These are simply conduit bonds that go through the local government to get the tax advantage. And why we're running this bill, there is no tax advantage in Wyoming because it says 100%. So the company might as well just move here and pay your taxes, because the pilot payment, you don't get any break from. And so that's the idea, is to lower it to 50%. And then the locals would negotiate that. So if a large company or a 20 job company wanted to expand, a small construction or manufacturing company wanted to expand 20 jobs, that aren't there now. So there's all, that's what's going to happen in Wyoming. We're not going to have these big 2,000 job things move into Sweetwater or Natrona or Laramie County probably. But anyway, so we can get a little more activity, hopefully. It'll incentivize. That's all we're trying to do.
Okay, questions for Mr. Co-Chair? Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only question I have, and I don't think this is probably going to be an issue, but is there anything at all that would put the municipality or the county at risk with these? Anything at all that might be a detriment for them?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, there is no risk. The only deal is they will negotiate to get 50% of their property taxes for whatever term they negotiate. And just like Ms. Johnson, could be on the number of jobs, how long to pay off, whatever. It's a negotiation piece. But right now they're getting zero. There's nothing there. They're trying to incentivize something new to come there to start up. And in return for your investment in our county and hiring so many people, your payments are 50%. Payment in lieu of taxes, pilot, is 50% for 10 years or 5 years or 15, whatever the negotiated time is.
Anybody else? Mr. Chairman, so bonds could have a certain term, but this section's got a sunset. So can you have a bond that is longer term than the sunset?
Mr. Chairman, that was an amendment put on in the House to take another look at this program. The way I read it, and you guys work it over, but would be any of these that go into effect before that date, then are 50%. So it might be 15 years, a month before this expiration is how I read it.
And it could go past the sunset? Is that-
Yeah, the bond term could go, but that's how I read it. But if you read it differently, well, just make that bill better if you want.
I'm a little worried about that. That could call into question. I mean, you've issued bonds and the purchases of bonds like certainty and if this sunset date causes uncertainty, I mean, you might need another sentence that says something like any bonds issued before are good through their entire
I
term.
agree.
But we can
That's
talk
why we
about
have
it.
a Senate,
Yeah,
fix all those house shortcomings.
fair enough. Any other questions for Mr. Co-Chairman? All right, stay close. Does anybody else wish to testify on this bill? Jeremiah, Mr. Reaman. Would the courthouse have to be open to issue these bonds, Mr. Reaman?
Mr. Chairman, I imagine so.
Welcome, Mr. Reaman.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Jeremiah Reeman here on behalf of the Wyoming County Commissioners Association. We do support the legislation and appreciate the positive changes that effectuates relative to this particular piece of statutory construction. This has not been used for some time. Last time that it was attempted, of course, was in Converse County on a project that ultimately didn't come to fruition. I don't think that's because of the existing statutes, but it hasn't been beneficial. And I think it's time for us to make these updates and see if communities can use this as an effective tool to drive economic development in their community. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd stand for any questions.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Reaman? Any questions? Have you thought about the sunset connection to the, we were just talking about?
Mr. Chairman, I have not given that any
Okay.
thought.
All right. Anybody else? Thank you, Mr. Reaman. Would anybody else like to talk about this bill? Anybody online? Nope. We're the most boring committee. Nobody sees us online. Yeah. Nobody does anything. Then they're all here. So committee, you've heard the testimony. What's your pleasure? Got a motion by Schuler, discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I would suggest removing.
Let's get your mic
Oh,
on.
I'm sorry. I forget how these things work. I would submit an amendment. I haven't figured out the wording yet, but I would like to remove the sunset date on line 18, page 2. And I would like rather maybe request a report to the Joint Revenue Committee in 10 years, or however we do that, rather than have a repeal.
Senator Pappas.
Mr. Chairman, I think we can still leave the repeal date so that we have to come back and visit it. But I would think we could put something like this subsection shall remain in effect for projects initiated on or before July 1, 2032. So that anything that happened, the subsection still applies to them, but then it does repeal in 32, just so that we come back and look at it.
Senator Pappas, I think that's a good suggestion. Senator Baldwin, it seems that, I don't know, it's never a good idea to just take what your friends down the hall did and just say, no, we're going to throw that out. We're going to go back to the original bill. Kind of work with them, I think, and say, I like Senator Pappas' suggestion, but further discussion, anybody else? Senator Pappas, would you make that a formal motion?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that we add on line 819 after 2032, the following language. This subsection shall remain in effect for projects initiated on or before July 1, 2032.
So with that,
Or if you don't want to repeat the date, you could just say
can we
on
do
or
it with just
before the
one?
repeal date,
Yeah.
if you would like that better.
So we got a language that says this subsection is repealed effective July 1, 2032, and then you're adding to it.
Then I'm adding another sentence that says.
Is there a way that you could work your amendment? I'm just thinking of the tone of it, so that we only have one sentence.
Yeah, you could put a comma and say, except for projects
Now we're talking.
initiated on or before the repeal date.
Can you bring it home? Say it again.
Okay, so the sentence would read, this subsection is repealed effective July 1, 2023, except for projects initiated on or before the repeal date. Or this date, could be just this date because it's already in the sentence.
Right. Senator James,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
let's consider that. Would that be a formal motion?
Please.
Okay, Senator James.
Kind of a amendment to that or
You
kind of
bet,
different
friendly.
wording. It could say not to include existing projects. This subsection is repealed after July 1, 2032.
That's good too. Committee? That's good too.
That's
That
good
might
too.
be even better. It's clearer and to the
Can
point.
you say that again?
Fine.
Mr. Chairman, it'll say not to include existing projects. This subsection is repealed effective July 1, 2032.
We can try that. Is that friendly?
Existing,
tweak it?
existing, I still think it ought to be projects initiated,
Okay.
but
about
with his
then?
language
Not to include projects initiated before.
prior, on or before.
Can we do that? Is that friendly to everybody? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, Kim. Yeah, I'm sorry. You're just watching the minds creep here. Okay, further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Back on the bill? Anything else on the bill? Okay, let's call the roll.
House Bill 22, Senator Baldwin.
Aye.
Senator James.
Aye.
Senator Pappas.
Aye.
Senator Schuler.
Aye.
Chairman Case.
I'm going to be a no, but this is going to be a good bill. So who will carry it on the floor? Who wants to carry it? Senator Schuler, you want to, or?
Sure.
Okay, Senator Schuler. It'll be good. Don't worry, Mr. Chairman. You're going to get your bill. All right. Is there anything else coming before the committee? You can see what we're doing. These bills won't even be heard till next week in the Senate. So the earliest could possibly be heard would be Monday. They'll be looking for some House bills to do on committee of the whole. So I imagine that's when they come up. We good?
We're
All
good.
right, I'll take a look at the report and Senator James and Senator Pappas can. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much,
Mr.
Ms.
Chairman.
Johnson. Nice to meet you. Mr. Chairman, you got a second?